All right. Hello, everyone. We are live now, and today is day three of the today's day three of the personality disorder workshops that we've been doing. I'm hoping that those of you who are been with us for the past few days understand that we are doing this and we are now live on all the forum. We're gonna go live right now on Instagram. Go live on Instagram. Hello everyone. Today we're doing schizotypical. The schizotypical. That is the that is what we are working on today. Schizotypical. Say hello. Let me know you're joining us. Hi on Facebook. Hi on Instagram. And hello to you on TikTok. Hopefully today we can deep dive into schizotypical. And next week, tomorrow, we're going to pick up on cluster number 2. So invite your friends, invite your neighbors, and let's get to class. Let's get to work. What do we? Yes, let's see your comments. Let me know where you're watching from. Let me know where you're watching from. Those of you on Facebook, hello. TikTok, hello. Schizotypical today. That is what we're looking at. We've addressed paranoid personality disorder. We've addressed schizoid yesterday, and today we're looking at schizotypical personality disorder. And all of these are in cluster A of personality disorders that is known as the odd and eccentric cluster. Now, this is not because they are not. Somebody's trying to hold on. Let's see. Invite you to co-host. No. We will continue with that. And so it's important that we go through this just so we know what the different types are. So we stop labeling people. And we are all on the same page. So schizotypical. Today is schizotypical. Uh, uh, have you all heard of that? Schizotypical, not schizophrenia, but schizotypical. When you have someone who is very, it seems as if they don't go along with the social norms. They cannot tend to live in their own world. They might dress in unusual ways. They might always see signs. That's the kind of person when the clock is 2:22, it makes a big difference to them. If it's 4:44, there's a sign in it. They see signs in coincidences. They hear meanings that other people miss. Or they believe in messages in their dreams and their messages. You might see that they dress in unusual ways. They speak in patterns. They make sense of their world through in their own interpretation. They live in their own imaginative world, right? It's not schizophrenia. There is no hallucination. There is nothing. It's just the world that they live in, right? That person, if what I'm saying makes sense to you, then it could be schizotypal personality disorder. All right, it's a condition where the imagination, anxiety, and perception kind of blend into one very unique reality or perception. So again, I'm Dr. Akindotun Merino, and today we are exploring the third disorder in the odd or eccentric cluster, which is the cluster A, and that is schizotypical personality disorder or schizotypal personality disorder. All right. So, being, when you see hidden meanings in coincidences, it doesn't mean that you're psychotic. It just means that you could be the schizotypal personality. You could have schizotypal personality disorder, right? Uh, Now, some of you wonder, why is that cluster that we've been talking about for 2 days? Why is that cluster called? I hope you can see me properly. Why is that cluster called odd and eccentric? Why is it called odd and eccentric? These are not like crazy people, but why is the cluster called odd and eccentric? Right. Cluster A includes the paranoid, the schizoid, and schizotypal personality disorder. They're called odd and eccentric because the behaviors usually looks unusual. It looks detached and is societally different. All right. So you find the paranoid personality disorder, that person is detached because they fear harm from others. Then you see the schizoid that we did yesterday. They just feel differently from others. They feel like, they don't need other people. And then you have the schizotypal uh, personality disorder, which adds another layer of drama, of magic, and unusual thinking. We need these people in our lives, really. Yeah, they add a touch of the extraordinary into ordinary moments. You understand? So nothing is just ordinary to them. They find meanings into everything. These individuals, these persons, kind of live on the border of imagination and reality. They're not lost in psychosis. Okay, there's no psychosis here. They're not lost in psychosis, but they deeply feel and they're influenced by their imagination. Their imagination and reality kind of, fight to balance. So schizotypal personality disorder, which we'll call another SPD, lives between imagination and reality, but it's not madness, but it's mysterious. They're mysterious. There's something about them. They live in a world of their own. They are not contained by all of the societal expectations that we all kind of have to abide by. So the schizotypal personality disorder is sometimes also marked by their social anxiety. They have eccentric behaviors. They can have distorted thinking. They often experience the world in mysterious ways. They experience the world in very symbolic ways. They're very superstitious about what is going on around them. They're the ones that say, don't throw a penny down. They're the ones that say, oh, don't spit on this. Very superstitious. Don't wear this color or don't do that. Very superstitious. They might actually believe that coincidences have hidden meaning. So say hi to us when you join me, please. Tell us where you're watching from. They actually believe that coincidences have hidden meanings, right? And they can sense your energy. They can sense other people's energy. They might talk in abstract. Things are very metaphoric in their lives. And sometimes it's hard to follow their messages because they live in their own world. They're not delusional, like I've said. They're not delusional at all. It's not schizophrenia. But they know that their own experiences are unusual. They know that their experiences are unusual. And they understand that other people might not feel that way, but this is how they are. This is how they live. So if you can imagine a person, we just call the person, Mary Shade something, who believes that, her neighbor's choice of shirt color or suit color or dress color carries a message about the weather. So anytime my neighbor wears green, it's going to rain. Something like that. She might even journal her dreams. They might look for symbols in TV shows. They prefer staying home because the crowd can make them anxious. And she's aware that other people think that she's strange. All right. She knows this. But she doesn't see herself that way at all. And she just feels that her world is so much more richer and so much more connected than all of the world that we live in, right? That other people live in. They're aware that you're thinking that they're strange, but to them, they feel like their world is full of meaning. They feel that their world is richer, and they feel sorry that you are not part of that you're not part of that world. That you're not part of that world. So how do you experience a schizotypal personality in social life? You can see sometimes it could be an artist who is just layered clothing. They wear bright colors every day because they feel like this is confirming who they are, or that it's going to protect them in some kind of way from negative energy. At work, people might smile and try to avoid this person, but she could interpret their glances as proof that they feel the power that's emanating from her. That they're feeling my presence, they're feeling my aura. If you have this person in your family, they might, if you invite them to family events, they might say they're not coming to your family event because they feel that the energy is off. The energy's off. I cannot be part of that energy. They listen to tone of voices. They look for hidden meanings in words. And if it doesn't jive with what they are feeling, they're not doing it. They live in their own inner world, so you can find someone who likes keeping notebooks of their dreams and jotting down their thoughts for the day, their guide for the day. They're not hallucinating. It's not an hallucination, but it's how they experience life, right? So I mean, it sounds like fun. Like you want to live in that world, right? And feel people also feel deeply spiritual. They live in a world full of patterns, of symbols, and meanings that most people never see. So they live in this world, this make-believe world, this world that is so beautiful that only them actually see that world. So when we're looking at key features and symptoms, we can look at the DSM-5 to the TR to try to just summarize some of those key symptoms. So the definition, according to the DSM, says schizotypal personality disorder involves social and interpersonal deficits with their cognitive or perceptual distortion and eccentric behaviors, usually beginning by early adulthood. And it would include five of this. It would include at least five of what I'm going to list now. Number one, ideas of reference. So they believe unrelated events that are not related to them. So their ideas of reference can be from anything. All right. It could be from anything. It could be from far countries. It could be on the TV. It could be anywhere. They have odd beliefs, or they have what we call magical thinking. Odd beliefs or magical thinking. Unusual perceptual experiences. Their perceptions are so highly developed, and they have unusual perceptions. They can see things that we are not seeing. They sometimes have odd speech or thinking patterns. They just don't think the same like you normally would think. People regular people would think. I don't want to say normal, because what is normal, right? So the odd speech or thinking patterns, they're very suspicious, and there's suspicions and or very paranoid fears about places, people, things, events, inappropriate or limited emotional expression. A very limited emotional expression. That's a characteristic. It's a very inappropriate or limited emotional expression. So this is the kind of person that will start laughing at a funeral. All right, because to them, they're seeing that person in a different place. Do you understand what I'm saying? So inappropriate, a very limited emotional expression. It could be, something has happened that should warrant some kind of expression from this person, and their affect is simply flat. Sometimes their appearance is eccentric, their behavior is eccentric. There's a lack of close friendships outside of their family. There's a lack of close friendships. There's also excessive social anxiety that doesn't fade until they get to something that's familiar to them. So there's social anxiety. So these features make relationships difficult. So the person may crave connection. You may want to be connected. You may want to have intimacy, but the unusual style usually creates the distance. It creates the distance, and it's kind of frustrating to them because they want to make those connections. They want connections, but they push people away because of their thoughts and because of the way that they think and the way that they behave. When we talked about paranoid personality disorder, and we talked about schizoid personality disorder, we traced exposure back to childhood. It's the same thing with this. We're taking exposure back to childhood, right? And so the research shows us that genetics, and early childhood exposures, a childhood environment will play major roles in schizotypal personality disorder. It is part of the schizophrenia spectrum, meaning that it shares the same biological and psychological similarities, but without the psychosis, without the full psychosis, if that makes sense. So it's in the schizophrenia spectrum, but it's not schizophrenia. It doesn't have psychosis with it. It's usually an early exposure, or it could be genetics. So if a child is raised in a chaotic, very inconsistent, or emotionally cold home, a home where there is no nurturing, a home where there's no warmth, there is, or parenting is inconsistent. When you're raised in a home like that, then you learn to rely on your own imagination for safety. You learn to rely on your imagination. That imagination, then, because it's being the most accessed part of your living, then it becomes, because it's you've heard the term neurons that fire together will wire together, right? And so once from the constant usage of this, it becomes rigid or eccentric in adulthood. Because it becomes rigid or eccentric in adulthood. Now, there could also be traumas. There could be social rejection, chronic isolation, and all of this then strengthens that magical or suspicious thinking. So those are the things that happen, right? That's where exposure happens. So think of a child who grows up and they've been ignored. They've been ignored, or parenting is inconsistent, like I said, and they just might begin to invent their own stories. Think of a child who nobody's explaining anything to them. Nobody tells them what's going on in the house. Some families might say children should be seen and not heard. Those kind of things. And those children then tend to live in their own stories. And they live in their own imagination and to make sense of their world. All right. So they might say things like, the clock ticked twice because somebody loves me. Do you understand? They might say, the sun rises this way, and so that means that this is going to happen. If I count nine, the ninth person is wearing green, then this is this. So they begin to understand their own world. They make sense of their world by the stories and the patterns that they have control over. So over time, those patterns that we've just talked about then begins to harden into this belief systems that shapes the way we see reality. It begins to shape the way they see reality. So when the real world feels unsafe, when the world that this child is inhabiting feels unsafe, it feels undetermined, when that's happening, then the imagination becomes the safest place to live. The imagination becomes the safest place to live. And that child grows up living in that space. It impacts friendships. It impacts work. It impacts every parts of life in adulthood. So in daily life, a person with a schizotypal personality disorder might dress unusually. All right. They might speak in riddles. They make just very very surprising associations during conversations. You might be thinking you're talking about this and they're going to say something else, which makes sense in their own world. They might struggle with teamwork. They might struggle with group work, right? Unless they're with people who are both creative and spiritual. That might work for them. In relationships, they can be affectionate, but they're unpredictable, or they will just avoid conflict altogether. This is a person that doesn't want to talk about it. This is a person that just wants to bury it and move on. All right. And even if they're in therapy, for example, they might actually interpret their own bonding with the therapist based on hidden signs. Maybe what the therapist is wearing, their counselor is doing. So they have their own hidden ways of interpreting their world, and they often feel like outsiders, right? Like they don't fit in, and very unsure on how to connect with others, without losing the person, without losing who they are. Because they don't want they love that space. They love that the imaginative space that they live in. They often feel like outsiders, but it's the wiring, it's the way they've been wired. So I want you to understand that this is not a choice somebody is making. It's the way the brain has been wired. Neurons that fire together will wire together. So it's the brain that's been wired over all these years since childhood. So this is what it is. How do we treat this? There are different types of treatment for this. Psychotherapy works, medication works if it's needed. And like I said, that we are hosting a healing circle for people who are either in relationship with people with personality disorders, or you feel like you have one. We then are having type joint healing so that we can send you the link after the 10 days. For this 10 days, we're talking about personality disorders. This is day number 3. We did day 1 on paranoid paranoid personality disorder. Day 2, schizoid personality disorder. Today is schizotypal personality disorder. And for those of you watching me on TikTok, I just haven't changed that day to the topic that's on there. It's supposed to be day 3, so I will figure out a way to edit that at some point. So people with schizotypal personality disorder live quietly on the edges of community. They're usually often misunderstood. Some people can call them weirdos, or people can say they're too deep, but their world is filled with meaning. They just need spaces where they can safely express themselves, where they can safely share. If this sounds familiar, if you love someone who experiences the world this way, join the healing circle at the end of our 10-day blitz. It is a guided, safe community when we are going to be able to share and heal together. So join healing is the comment. Join healing on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook. Your invitations. This is your invitation to join healing. All right. So let's recap this cluster A. Let's recap cluster A. The odd or eccentric personalities. We've spent the past 3 days exploring cluster A, odd and eccentric personality. These are people who live on the edges of connection, watching, thinking, or feeling differently from the rest of us. All right. Each one is trying to protect themselves from emotional pain in their own unique way. All right. In their own unique way. So today we're bringing it all together. Paranoid, schizoid, and schizotypal personality. I'm Dr. Akindotun Merino, and this is day 3 recap for you. Day 3 recap for you. Why are they called odd or eccentric? For those of you who were not with me 2 days ago or yesterday, the cluster, why are they called odd or eccentric? Well, these disorders are called odd or eccentric because they stand apart from what most people consider as typical social behaviors. These are not typical social behaviors. So people in cluster A often appear distant, detached, or different. So those 3 things is distant, detached, or different. Not because they want to be difficult, but because connection just feels unsafe and confusing. So when we're talking about cluster A, right, think of it as a spectrum of distancing from others. Look at cluster A as a spectrum of distancing themselves from others. So the person with paranoid personality disorder fears people, so they're going to distance themselves. The person with schizoid personality disorder avoids people, so they're going to detach themselves. You understand this? And then the person with a schizotypal personality disorder reimagines people and world in their own language, so they're going to be different. So it's distance, is the 3 Ds. It's distance, detachment, and difference. How can I get myself away from people so I don't get hurt? How do I get myself away from people so I don't get I don't get mixed up in the messes of their lives that can also impact me? How can I get myself away from people so that I don't relive the pain of yesterday? So they create, the brain has been wired to form these personalities, right? So the paranoid personality, for a quick recap, is usually somebody who is very suspicious and who is avoidant. They're going to avoid eye contact. The person with the paranoid personality disorder, everything begins and ends with distrust. I don't trust you. I don't trust the system. I don't trust anybody, right? These persons are constantly on guard. They will interpret like just regular, neutral, benign actions as threats. They believe that others are plotting against them. All right. And they're going to hold everything in suspicion. Suspicion, suspicion, suspicion. Right. Everybody's suspect. Their deepest fear, though, is betrayal. The deepest fear is betrayal. That, it's somebody is going to betray me. Their healing begins when they discover that the world is not so malignant, and that safety doesn't mean that everybody is wanting to mess with you, if that makes sense, right? And then you go to the schizoid personality. Remember, the paranoid personality wants to be distant from you, right? The one is it's distant from you. And then the schizoid personality wants to detach from you. It's a person is it's who is very withdrawn. These individuals feel comfortable in isolation. They feel comfortable in solitude. They rarely show emotions and don't feel a strong need for closeness or attention. They love people from a distance. They don't want, they look, they don't need, they feel like they don't need you. They don't need you. They don't need anybody. They love people from a distance, and they find emotionality very exhausting. They get overwhelmed. This is a person that they don't want to relive what happened. Healing begins for the schizoid personality type when they learn that connection doesn't mean intrusion. That you can also be at peace with other people and with yourself, and let other people in bit by bit. Is this making sense? All right. So then today we talked about a schizotypal personality disorder. These are the colorful people, abstract imagery, dreams, and journals, and patterns and symbols. These are the people who are different. These people see the world through a symbolic lens. There are no coincidences. There's no coincidences here. They feel that there's a message. Every coincidence is a message. All conversations are coded. They're very intuitive, but they're very socially anxious. Often feel like they are outsiders. They're not living in delusion, like I said earlier, but they live in metaphors. They live in figurative language. Their healing starts when the imagination and reality learn to coexist without fear. So, in summary, when we look at all three together, we see this protective pattern of cluster A. It's a protective category. You see that the paranoid personality disorder is distrust, and they distrust people, and they distrust their world. You find that the schizoid is detachment by withdrawing from their world. And the schizotypical, though, what they've done is they've distorted and redefined their world. They're different through distortion. They've redefined the world that they live in. These are not just mental health labels. Stop labeling people, by the way. These are survivors. They have created a personality in order for them to survive the painful world that they inhabited. Healing is possible. Healing is possible. DM or type join healing. Join healing. After day 10, we are going to have that healing circle. If you recognize yourself or someone you know in the stories that we've talked about today or yesterday or the day before, then you don't have to face the world alone. At the end of this 10-day blitz, we will hold a healing circle for cluster A, for cluster B, and for cluster C. So type in join healing and we will send you the link. Join healing. Now, tomorrow, what is happening tomorrow, guys? What is happening tomorrow? Tomorrow, we're going to the more dramatic, emotional, and erratic personality disorders. We're moving on to cluster B. Cluster B is tomorrow. We start cluster B tomorrow. So if cluster A was about distance, cluster B is about intensity. It's about intensity. These are personalities who feel deeply, who react powerfully, and often struggle to regulate their emotions. All right. In the next few days, we're going to meet 4 members of Cluster B. We are coming in contact with the antisocial personality disorder. The antisocial personality disorder. This is where empathy is missing. Empathy goes missing. Antisocial personality disorder. And then we go to the borderline personality disorder. People talk about label people every day. You're borderline, borderline, borderline. Well, tomorrow, I mean, the next day and the next 2 days, we're going to talk about borderline personality. Tomorrow, we'll talk about the antisocial. The day on Sunday, we're going to look at borderline personality. Then histrionic personality. So when we're looking at borderline personality disorder, this is when your emotions swing between love and fear, between love and fear. Histrionic personality disorder, this is where the attention becomes survival. The attention becomes survival. And then finally, in part of a cluster B, we're looking at the narcissist. We'll look at the narcissistic personality disorder. This is where you find that the self is hiding in insecurity. Okay, it's insecurity that they're hiding under, but it comes across as someone who does not care about the people around them. So cluster B is raw, people. It's emotional. It could be traumatic. It shows us how pain can turn into performance and how healing can bring back balance. All right. So I'm Dr. Akindotun Merino. Stay with me as we continue this journey through the human mind. So tomorrow is the antisocial personality disorder, when empathy goes missing. I'll see you at the same time tomorrow. Bye. All right. We're going to end the show. All right. We'll end the show, end the stream.